6 years after the police shooting of Michael Brown pushed the Black Lives Matter movement into the national spotlight. In Cobb County, Georgia, Sharice Davis looked at the conservative county school board members and saw no black women. She ran for office and won. Republican women are also running in record numbers. After a blue wave in 2018, Republican women are hoping to close the gender gap in party identification and party leadership. At least 227 Republican women have filed to run for the House, almost double what that number was a decade ago. After winning her primary, GOP House candidate Nancy Mace came one step closer to becoming the first Republican woman elected to Congress from South Carolina. Elsewhere, LGBTQ candidates are making their own kind of history. When Bree Kidman, Maine's first openly non-binary Senate candidate, was filing forms for the election, Kidman noticed only gendered titles like Mrs., Ms., or Mr. in the drop-down menu. Kidman alerted the Senate Ethics Committee, and a week later, the non-binary option Mix was added to the site. 2 states, Kansas and Vermont, could elect their first openly transgender lawmakers to their state legislatures. If Stephanie Byers and Taylor Small win their races in November, they'll join at least 4 other openly trans lawmakers serving in other states. While 2020 is breaking records all over, this year isn't a complete anomaly. It's another point and trendline of women and LGBTQ candidates growing power in politics. It's a realignment that could change the face of American politics forever. Suburban women are a coveted voting demographic. They were key to President Donald Trump's victory in 2016, and they're shaping up to be a pivotal demographic in this year's election, too. In his own appeals to suburban voters, President Trump has tweeted about protecting suburban housewives and their suburban lifestyle dreams from the invasion of low-income housing. But what do the suburbs really look like in 2020? And how closely does President Trump's idea of the suburban housewife match up to the reality?
The suburban voter, the suburban housewife, women and men living in the suburbs, they want security and they want safety. They don't want to have people coming in and forcing low-income housing down their throats.
The reality is that the suburbs that President Trump is imagining, affluent, homogenous, fearful of cities, doesn't exist anymore. While he characterizes suburbia as the pinnacle of the American dream, poverty is rising faster in the suburbs than in cities. In the past few decades, the old pattern of affluent suburbs surrounding poor cities has been reversed, as low-income residents are rapidly pushed out of gentrifying city centers. And they're increasingly diverse. Minorities now comprise around 30% of suburban residents, about the same fraction as the nation as a whole. And what about housewives? How many women would fit that description? According to Pew Research, marriage rates have dropped dramatically since the 1960s. About 70% of women with children work outside of the home, and they're the primary breadwinners in 40% of households with children under 18. Overall, the share of stay-at-home moms is a little over half of what it was in 1967. And they're more likely to care about healthcare and immigration than crime and drugs. But it's important to note that the issues that matter most to women vary widely across race, generation, income, and education level. It's difficult to flatten them into one monolithic voting bloc, which is what the generalization of the American suburban housewife does. Polls show that former Vice President Joe Biden is leading President Trump in 3 key swing states, largely because of Biden's edge among women voters. So if President Trump wants to win in 2020, he might want to start thinking of women as more than an outdated stereotype.
President Trump diving into the general election campaign last night, the second longest convention speech in modern history, second only to the one he gave 4 years ago, that was somewhere in between a State of the Union and a campaign rally. For the first time ever, the White House, the People's House, as the president himself called it, being used to host a political convention. One top Democrat last night tweeting, "Get off our lawn." The president at times inflating his own record and repeatedly laying into Joe Biden. With his family and a fireworks finale, President Trump basking in the glow of his Republican renomination.
I profoundly accept this nomination for President of the United States.
Most notable, the night's backdrop, the president transforming the White House into a partisan political prop.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
Openly flouting long-standing norms and laws.
The fact is, we're here and they're not.
Despite more than 3,000 Americans dying from coronavirus this week alone, hundreds of supporters crowded the South Lawn with no social distancing and few masks.
To save as many lives as possible, we are focusing on the science, the facts, and the data.
The president taking direct aim at his Democratic rival.
Joe Biden.
Attacking Joe Biden by name 41 times, even though Biden last week never mentioned him once in his acceptance speech.
Joe Biden is not a savior of America's soul. He is the destroyer of America's jobs.
President Trump at times sounding more like a challenger than the incumbent, vowing to restore law and order amid a new round of racial unrest, but never referencing Jacob Blake, the black man shot by police in Wisconsin.
The Republican Party condemns the rioting, looting, arson, and violence we have seen in Democrat-run cities all like Kenosha.
But as a candidate 4 years ago, Mr. Trump promised this.
The crime and violence that today afflicts our nation will soon, and I mean very soon, come to an end.
Biden on Thursday looking to capitalize.
He's rooting for more violence, not less, and it's clear about that.